everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bronze Age Minecraft, a series where we set out to recreate the Bronze Age settlements of ancient Greece. My name is Archaeologist, and I'm a professional archaeologist and certified interpretive guide, and today we are going to continue building the palatial complex at Pylos. But first, I'm going to show you how the walls would have been built, much like I did in episode 1 with the wattle and daub for the apsidal house. So first we need to frame up the wall with timbers. I'm going to go 11 high and however many across feels good to me. Okay, so this is your wall pretty much framed, but it still looks like garbage. Hold on, let me fix this. I realize that this doesn't really matter, but it's gonna bug me. Okay, so now you have your standard wall section framed in timber and a door frame. So now what we do is we're gonna put in courses of stone. We'll put one down and a couple of them across and fill this whole thing with stone. Usually courses of stone, not just rubble, but also sometimes rubble too, rubble and mortar. And there you have it. There is your first level. Well, that's gonna bother me too. Hold on. Now the first level here is stone, heavy, but the second level up there is going to need to be something a little lighter. So let's do this and this, because I got to get up there. So up here we're going to use mud brick, and they used mud bricks in the second story more than likely as well, because it's lighter than stone. Okay, so you're left with this, stone courses on the bottom and mud brick on top. But the whole thing would have been completely plastered, so you wouldn't have seen any of this. But there's also another way they could have been doing the walls as well, and I'll show you on the other half of this stone wall. So let's take this section out. And mud brick goes in. So you have this course of stone on the bottom, but mud brick on top, which should look familiar as we use this technique in the northeastern building. And again, the whole thing would have been plastered, so you would have never seen any of this. Now the course of stone at the bottom would have been so that any standing water wouldn't melt the mud brick and cause the wall to collapse. So there you have it, that's how it would have normally been constructed. But we're not going to do that. We're going to construct the walls out of diorite and a couple other things, because that's going to simulate the plaster on the outside. Just know that the walls would have been built with timbers framed like that. And what's interesting is, we see that in Minoan Crete as well. So this is a building style that's been around for a while and is pretty widespread. Okay, let me tear this down and we can get to the meat of today's episode. Alright, resource gathering is done, and this is some of what we're going to use today. And you're probably thinking, Thuscalos, why do you have so much blue wool? Well, we're going to get to that. One of the things we're shooting for today is roof framing, some doors, and some framing around the doors. And, you know, let's just get into it. Oh, and you're probably wondering what's up with that. Well, we're going to make some fancy door frames too. What I'm putting in now is the roof beams that the columns would have supported, and you'll be able to see them from inside the complex. Now look, some of these beams we're not too sure on their actual placement, since none of them actually survived the fire that claimed the palatial complex. We know that there had to have been beams up there, otherwise why the pillars? So at this point, I'm just putting in what looks and feels right to me, but as usual, don't take the placement of these beams as historical fact. As you can see, the blue wool is going to be a stripe that runs around the outside of the palatial complex. The plain diorite walls, even with texturing, are boring. So though it may not be historically accurate, I'm going to put these wide strips of color to liven it up, break it up, and class it up. Now let's talk about the doors. We're going to put in some doors and door frames in the entire complex, and first one up is this one. And this is where I'm going to show you how we're going to build this. So first thing that goes in is this piece of timber here. Then the door. Then we'll also add a set of stairs to make the transition a little better for walking around. And we're going to finish it off by capping the whole thing in diorite to simulate the plastered wall around it. And there you have it. Pretty simple. Let's knock out the rest. With the door frames in antiquity, the wood was plastered over, and at the bottom near the door jamb, the wood would have had a socket that took up a pivot, maybe made of bronze or something, and that would have allowed the door to swing. In a theme that is already becoming quite common, none of this stuff really survives other than some of the door jambs because of the fire that destroyed the complex. We don't even know what the doors would have looked like, but with as fancy as things are in this place, a highly decorated door is definitely not out of the question. Alright, now apparently I didn't learn my lesson with the Tholos tomb because here we are again with glazed terracotta. So just how some of the floors are fancy, we're going to make some of the doorways fancy as well. And I'm only going to put these up around some of the doors that lead into important areas, like the Megaron. But the doorways being fancy aren't really based in the archaeological record. I mean, the walls were painted, yes, and the doorways were plastered over. But I don't know if there's any difference between the painted plastered walls and the plastered door frames. If it was me and I was painting the palace with murals, I'd make the door frames nice as well. So I'm going to desperately try to get these to line up properly, and if you don't like it, well, too bad, it's my series. But I know you'll like it, so let's give it a whirl, shall we? Well, that wasn't too bad. I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. Once I finished the door frames, I knocked out a couple smaller tasks like filling the gap between the door frames and doors, installing some stairwells, and getting the throne in place. I even took time to pave the area in front of the palatial complex and in between some of the buildings. This has been an awful lot of work, so I think I'm going to call it there for this episode and leave you with some glamour shots. But until next time, I'll see you then.